Hi, I'm Donna Kallner, and this is Lesson 1 of the Cross-Knit Looping eCourse. In this unit, I'll introduce two project ideas. The second project may be something new students want to come back to in the second half of the course when you have a little more time and experience. That project shows the use of increases and decreases, which will be familiar to returning students but won't be covered in this course until Lesson 2. If you're new to looping, or if your time is limited this week, here's a smaller project that might be better suited for now. While you're stitching it, you can play the rest of the video to start getting ideas for later. This project is a sheath for a package of tapestry needles. Along with a small ball of yarn, it's good to have an extra needle or two along when you're looping on the go, just in case you drop one on the bus. To begin, make a wrapped base cord as you did when you sampled the basic cross-knit looping technique in the first video of this lesson. I'm demonstrating right-handed. If you're left-handed, the PDF handout on left-handed technique will help remind you what direction your stitching advances and how to set up the wrapped base cord. Work simple looping into the wrapped base cord for the first row, the base row. This time, allocate less thread for the lags between stitches than I showed in the samples in the basic cross-knit techniques video. After the base row is complete, make one stitch of simple looping in the first lag on the base row. Now you're ready for cross-knit looping. Work cross-knit looping in a continuous spiral the length of the needle package. When the sheath is the size you want, stitch to one edge of the piece. To close up the bottom of the sheath, alternate stitches between the live edge on one side of the sheath and the live edge on the other side as you work across the opening. Here's one stitch on the back, and notice where the working thread lies when I complete that stitch. Now go to the other live edge. Change the orientation of the needle and make one stitch on that side. Remember, the needle always passes over the working thread in looping. Note the position of the working thread as that stitch is completed. Now make another stitch on the back edge, then a stitch on the front edge, and alternate sides while you work your way across that opening. When you get to the other edge, here's a little extra security for that last stitch. Give the yarn one full wrap around the needle. Then press that with your dominant thumb to hold the wrap in place as you pull the yarn through. That makes a little knot. Bury the tail of the yarn on the inside of the piece, trim it, and you're done. You could just whip stitch the edges together to close the base, and there's not a thing wrong with that. But here's something you want to file away. The alternating looping stitches are more elastic than a whipped edge. We're going to get to more elastic ways to begin a project in the last video of this lesson. For this little practice project, though, you may want to trim the corners off your needle package to make it easier to slide in and out of the sheath. If you're up for a larger project now, or you're watching this video to get ideas for later, here's a project caddy that incorporates cross-knit looping with wool felt. Start by cutting a square of sturdy felt fabric. To transform this flat fabric into a basket, think of that square as being divided in thirds, vertically and horizontally. One at a time, you match a corner to another point on the grid 2/3 of the way to an adjacent corner and stitch the match edges together. Fold one edge over to the first parallel grid line. Anchor the yarn by burying the tail on what will be the inside of the vessel near the edge. Bring the yarn out between the layers. Now stitch the two layers together using blanket stitch embroidery. That's exactly the same as simple looping, but instead of inserting the needle under a wrapped base cord, you pierce the felt. When those two edges are stitched together, bury the tail of the yarn and snip it off. Go to the next corner of the felt and repeat the process, folding one edge over parallel to a grid line and stitching the edges together. Do that until you have all four corners stitched to form a vessel. Now work a row of blanket stitch embroidery around the rim of the vessel with the lags between stitches lying along the edge of the felt. This will be the base row for your cross knit looping, so space your stitches with that in mind. There's no right or wrong gauge here. You need to get used to trusting your instincts and making choices based on your own tastes and materials. You'll notice that I used a longer thread than usual for this base row of blanket stitch. That thread is not hip to tip. I did it so I could get all the way around the rim without having to add thread, although the longer yarn is apt to twist on itself, and that's annoying. But have I mentioned that rules are made to be broken? When you finish with the base row, that blanket stitch edging, you're ready to begin working in cross knit looping. There's a little something different going on here. In the needle packet sheath, we worked down from a wrapped base cord. This time I'm working up from a base row. It's a choice I made so I wouldn't have to support the weight of the felt while stitching. Instead, the felt base rests on the table. My non-dominant hand is free to help maintain the size and position of the last stitch made and to hold the live edge up so I can see where to insert the needle for the next stitch. When you change the orientation of your stitching, double check a couple of things. First, in cross knit, the needle passes behind a stitch on the previous row. And in looping, the needle always travels over the working thread. Even if it's not directly over, the path is generally over the working thread. Once you get yourself oriented to how you want to hold the piece as you stitch, it's just a matter of stitching. You can complete a project like this by cross knit looping in a continuous spiral, adding on thread as needed until the height of the collar is what you want. But I decided to do a little shaping with decreases and increases on the collar for this vessel. Now, you'll learn about shaping in lesson 2, so I won't go into it here in detail, but I do want to say this. You'll learn that with a solid foundation of techniques, you can make all kinds of design decisions. That's really what this course is about. You may make very different choices on this project than what I made, and that's great. So from here, I'll just tell you how I completed the sample that I made and invite you to make your own choices. The design decision I made was to create a kind of stand-up collar at the rim that contrasts in color and texture from the felt in the body of the vessel. So I decreased by skipping stitches to reduce the diameter of the opening a bit. Then I increased by adding stitches to bring the fabric back out to the circumference of the original opening. I liked the texture on the wrong side of the fabric, so I decided to feature it instead of the right side of the fabric. To finish off this piece, I began stitching the live edge of the fabric to the buttonhole stitches on the base row where they pierced the felt. When I was about halfway around the rim, I thought it looked a little droopy. So to help support the rim and give it the volume I thought it needed to balance the visual weight of the felt base, here's what I did. I took some wool fleece and threaded it through the channel on the half of the rim that I had already stitched down. As I stitched down the second half of the rim, I trapped the fleece in the collar as I went. At the end, I buried the tail of my yarn, and this project is done. Now I have a nice little soft basket for work in progress that folds away when not in use. But I'm thinking this could be a dresser caddy to make for a man, a place to toss wallet, keys, cell phone, pocket knife, and whatever else they keep in their pockets. I'm always looking for guy gift ideas. Something to file away in my head for now. More important than what I made is the point this makes. You can cherry pick ideas and parts of ideas to suit your own intentions and materials. That's it for this video. There's still one more video in this lesson. I'll see you there.